on, we have, as I think you've heard, a very special guest. So please join me. Let's get right to it in welcoming Michael B. Jordan.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Happy holidays.
So you are coming up on like a year of talking about this movie, huh? It's been a while.
It has been a minute.
At least it's a good movie to have to talk about for a year. Right?
Great film. Great film.
Let's, I guess, just begin with the question of when Black Panther as a character first even entered your life. Were you one of those kids that read a lot of comic books or stuff like that?
Yeah, I was a nerd growing up. So a lot of cartoons, a lot of comic books and graphic novels. So I was somebody who, would beg my dad to take me to the comic book store so he can, I can pick my 2 comics, and that I cherished them. So I was one of those kids growing up. So Black Panther being one of the few characters, that looked like me growing up, it was definitely one that I gravitated to a lot growing up. So yeah, it was definitely one of those.
You and Ryan Coogler obviously go back. Fruitvale Station in 2013, Creed 2015. How did you two first meet, and why do you think you hit it off to the extent that you have? I mean, you guys are both still so young, and yet you've got all these collaborations now.
He's become a really close family friend over the years, and somebody that I think I was shooting this movie called Chronicle. I was shooting that film, and it was right around the time Trayvon Martin got shot and killed. And I remember just being really, really frustrated and really upset behind those events. And as an actor, trying to figure out what to say, how do you express yourself. I remember going on Facebook or online, typing out this huge long thing and then deleting it. That's probably not the right way to go about it. And I remember speaking to my agent at the time about wanting to do, a gritty independent film. I wanted to do a film up until that point, I haven't been the lead of any movies, and I really wanted to show that I could, carry a film, to see if I could. I was questioning myself at the time to see if I could do that. And I guess at the same time, Ryan was going through the Sundance Lab. He had wrote the script, senior project over at USC, and he, unbeknown to me, he wrote it for me, and he was reaching out to an assistant of an agent that was at the same agency I was at to get me the script. They ended up getting me the script. I read it, and I remember being extremely emotional about it and wanted to meet the director. And as soon as I got back from South Africa, actually we shot Chronicle in South Africa, I got back to the States. I made a stop to Ryan's, and then we got a chance to sit down and talk. And within the first 15 minutes, of meeting the guy and having some conversations and small talk, I just knew he was somebody that I connected with in a real way. Young, he spoke my language, he gets it. He's very, very talented. He was a savant of film, a student of film in general. And I remember us just liking the same films and liking the same stories, and we just really connected in a big way. Our families are very similar. Our families became close over the years as well. And it was just something that you just felt right. And immediately we started to get working on Fruitvale.
So with Fruitvale, it was, a very small budget, intimate scale kind of art house movie. Then you go to Creed, which is obviously a lot bigger, and now this. And I guess I wonder, first of all, he joined Black Panther after Chadwick had already been cast for Civil War.
Yep.
So now he comes on, and how does he present to you the idea of getting involved with this one as well? And was it an immediate, got to do this?
Yeah, it was, he just gave me a call. I was like, Mike, I think you should play this role. It'd be cool for you to play a villain. I was like, cool, let's do it.
No reservations about being the bad guy?
Nah, it was.
And that's reductive. I shouldn't say the bad guy, because it's more complicated.
Yeah, I think, antagonist.
Yes.
It's kind of like linking him as an antagonist, not necessarily a quote-unquote typical villain.
Right.
But, me and him, it's really, unorthodox, really loose, friendly. He calls me up and, or vice versa. And it's like, hey, man, this is something I think we should do together. It's like, all right, cool, let's talk about it. And we end up just, getting right to work on it.
Yeah.
And, he hasn't steered me wrong.
Not yet, yeah.
Nah.
So Killmonger
Bless you.
is, yeah, he's the guy that, without labeling the villain or whatever, he's the guy that's in the way of the guy who most people are rooting for here. And yet, the thing that I think makes it kind of a tricky part, I would guess, to navigate is that his motivations are, and the way you play it, we kind of we do understand what's driving him, and there's a certain sympathetic side to it all. And so I just wonder how you personally decided to approach it so that was never lost, because it could have been.
Yeah, I think that's something that me and Ryan discussed and really talked about through and through. Is it's very personal to the African American experience, being part of that diaspora and what that meant. The question that Ryan was searching to find answers to is what it really means to be African. And you take somebody like Eric, who grew up in systemic oppression, product of the environment, product of the system. Then, of course, in the context of the comic book world and storylines of T'Challa and Killmonger, we had those kind of boundaries to play within, and we really wanted to make somebody who would look and feel like somebody that you would just walk down the street and could walk across. Somebody who people can see and touch and feel, very accessible, but at the same time had a valid point. It was two sides of a conversation, two sides of an argument, and they both make valid points.
Yeah.
I think T'Challa and Killmonger are the same in a lot of ways. They care about their people, to a fault. They'll do anything to protect them. And through Eric's experience growing up, he saw one way, to a means to an end, and T'Challa being brought up in royalty, being loved, and culture and history and tradition, had a different outlook on that. So, I think Eric at the core was very jealous and envious of not having all of that, even though he felt like he was entitled to it, or he felt like he was owed that. So he went about that in a very by any means necessary type of way. And I think just the climate right now in general, the message he was delivering and the way in which he delivered it was, I think a lot of people felt that pain and frustration, and I felt that was very valid.
Definitely. I want to read you something that Chadwick said in an interview recently, and then ask you for your take on the same thing. But, quote, as an African American, if you're disconnected from your ancestry and your past, you have this conflict. He was referring to your character, just that he could empathize, even though it was not the character he was playing, and it came up about, I think he had not been to Africa himself until he was in college. You just said you were there for Chronicle, but I wonder, growing up, what was your relationship to your heritage, to Africa itself, and how much did it mean when you first went there, whether it was for Chronicle or earlier?
Yeah, for me, I'm extremely blessed that, both my parents are very aware, tons of books, always being told stories, of my culture, my history, very knowledgeable of that growing up. So I had a very, broad and perspective and I guess education on my history and kind of where I come from. So, but never actually being there, my parents never actually have an opportunity to go. So there was still that, from the outside looking in, told perspective of what the continent was actually like, different countries within, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, my first time going, I was like 24, 23, 24.
Which part did you go?
I was going to Cape Town, which not necessarily, it's a different thing. Obviously, Mandela, Robben Island, being able to see kind of them coming out of apartheid, just that whole situation down there was definitely, very eye-opening. But you go further north, North Africa, you go to different countries there, and different tribes, and just the way they kind of communicate their culture, their history, just that family kind of feel. And the kids, like the children there, I think coming from, America over that way, you think we have it bad, you think we complain about a lot over here, but you go to, other third world countries and it really hits home, it really hits you. So it changed me a lot at a really young age. And I actually stayed a few months after filming just to be there for a while. So it kind of changed my perspective a little bit, and also sparked a forever growing kind of curiosity and longing to kind of like want more of that feeling, like feeling home in a sense.
So this production got underway. I guess it was mostly in Atlanta. Was the feeling on set different than other movies you've been in? Because I don't think there have probably been too many where it's predominantly people that look like you.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was a great feeling, man. It was, we're shooting in Atlanta. Obviously me and Ryan, we're on set. It's a very comfortable vibe. We're very comfortable. There's a lot of familiar faces. Like we had Rachel Morrison, our DP from Fruitvale. We had Hannah, which is our production designer, set designer from Fruitvale. Also, it was very familiar with those two. But then we also had this incredible cast, and crew from all walks of life. But being down in Atlanta, predominantly, you have a lot of black and brown people, man, a lot of strong women. The cast was incredible. So yeah, it felt awesome, to be there. It was a good time.
Was there a sense of greater pressure than usual? Not just because you got a $200 million budget but
it was
also
more pride.
Right, yeah.
It was more pride. I think everybody, knew what was at stake. We knew, the assumptions, the questions, all the, the rumors and this and that. Just all the chatter, the outside chatter, is something that I think it's really hard to not hear, whether you pay attention to it or not. It's there. So I think it was a kind of a pressure that we put on ourselves to just, make sure we got it right, and to leave everything that we had, in front of the camera every time we stepped on set, and be very thoughtful and think things through, and leave no rock unturned. And I think we did a good job finding that balance.
Yeah. So when you act in a movie of this size and scale with, I would imagine, a good amount of like green screen and effects and different things like that, do you approach your job any differently than when you're doing a Fruitvale? Is it is it a more broad kind of a way you do it, or is it just totally the same?
I think it's totally the same in the sense of character building, down to writing journals for all my characters. That's something that personally, that's just my process to really kind of get a handle on the character that I'm playing. So that was the same. Yeah, you have green screen and a lot more action, and fight choreography and different comic book history that you got to kind of layer in there. So there's a different muscle at work there, but basically the process is pretty much the same. Me and Ryan, we just try to make things as real as possible, no matter how fantastical or out of this world the environment is.
So get done with the movie. A chunk of time goes by, now it opens, and I just want to read some stats most people here have probably heard before, but just to remind you, because it's kind of amazing when you step back and think about it. 5th biggest, now the 6th biggest opening weekend ever. Stayed at number 1 for 6 weeks. Eventually $700 million domestically, which is number 1 for the year. $1.3 billion worldwide, number 2 only behind Infinity War. And that stat actually is kind of the most important, because for so many years the excuse for not making movies with black protagonists was, quote unquote, black films don't travel, and yet this traveled very, very far. What was how did you guys process the way this movie went over? I'm sure you thought and hoped big, but this big?
Yeah, I think it's that type of notion. Yeah, we thought and hoped that it would do well. We kind of figured it would, not to that level. There's no way you can sit there and predict or try to call that out from before. There's no way you can kind of do that, but we know there was a thirst and desire, especially within our community, and we are the number 1 consumer here in the States. So we knew it was a thirst and desire for that movie, for that character, for that representation. I think that's something that we haven't really had in this type of way on this scale. So yeah, we very optimistic about it, but there was no way we could pinpoint those type of records and all that, all those stats that you just ran off. But we had a good feeling if we did our job and we worked hard and we paid attention to all the things we needed to pay attention to and care about the story and character and just focus on the little things. The other things will kind of take care of itself, and I think that's what happened, especially when you get a studio like Marvel and Disney behind a message like this. You know, it lets the guard down on certain people, you know, that might walk into it or not want to go see this, not knowing the message or not knowing what they were going to get when they actually sat in the seats. And I think that's, you know, one of the, the upsides to, having, arguably the largest, biggest studio in the world get behind, this story, get behind this filmmaker, and really push it forward.
So, the kind of cultural impact of it I want to ask you about, because everybody is now familiar with the fact that I think it's the 18th Marvel movie, or Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, first with a black protagonist at the center, a black superhero protagonist and antagonist. But do you believe that is what it... I mean, I also want to remind people the world that it opened into in February of this year, because just to I know, not that long ago, guys, but just to kind of remind of a few things, because I wonder, not to get like very political here, but I don't think you can separate these things. It's 1 year, just over 1 year after the president was sworn in, 5 months after the Charlottesville stuff where apparently there were fine people on both sides, and 18 days after Mr. Trump referred to predominantly black nations as, quote, shithole countries, close quote. So, do you think that in some ways this had extra resonance for people who were kind of, insulted but didn't have a way to respond to that? I mean, that cannot... Even let's take it just on for you personally, to have a movie come out into that climate. Did it take on extra meaning for you?
I think it's really tough. I think the natural feeling of me personally, of everything that was going on at that time, you're looking for something positive, something reinforcing your opinions, your thoughts, where you stand, what side of history do you want to stand on? I think for me, it was medicine that I needed. I needed that product to come out. I think a lot of people felt that way. Have some ownership of your identity is constantly being questioned, constantly being picked at, constantly being shot down. So to be uplifted in a very positive way, in a royal way, to see yourself in powerful, strong black characters on screen, I think did a lot of good for a lot of people from all walks of life also, because this movie inspires so many different people from all over the world to take ownership of who they are, where they come from, and be proud of that. So I think the movie definitely came at a great time. I think it was a nice, I wouldn't say cure, but it was a nice, it helped along the shit that everybody was going through. Yeah. I think the movie was very timely, I guess, in that way.
Yeah. Last question is, that's the purpose that for some people it served when it came out. But for people, moving forward, let's say somebody today saw it for the first time. What do you hope people take away from this movie thinking or doing differently than when they showed up here today? What's the big takeaway for you?
Man, that's tough, man, because there's so many different themes in this movie that are going to speak to different parts of you, that's one of the powers of filmmaking, the powers of storytelling, is be able to give people an escape or hold the mirror up to your face and provoke thought and conversation. specifically, I think Africa's been portrayed in a certain type of way in television and film that's not accurate. You know, I feel like to be able to give an introduction, you know, to my culture, to our culture, in this type of way, I think is extremely important. Tradition, history, culture. Be proud of who you are. Your sense of identity. Yeah, your heritage is extremely important no matter where you come from. You take ownership and pride of that. And then also, you know, what can happen when you don't have that? You know, I think maybe, you know, to look to your fellow man, your fellow woman, you know, and have some compassion, have some empathy, have some curiosity, not to prejudge, yeah, maybe just be better people, I think is a common thought that I've had. So yeah, first time seeing it, you know, it's a lot of action. It'll make you, you know, make you laugh, you know, make you angry, make you upset, you know, make you happy, make you sad. It's a very layered film. Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed it.
And yeah, congratulations, Best Picture Drama Golden Globe nominee today. So awesome. All right, thanks a lot.